He saw the cruel scars on her back. Her Tomahawk missiles haunted the Admiral forever. The chilling revelation struck like a lightning bolt, sending shivers down the spines of everyone present. The air felt thick and heavy, crackling with an unspoken tension, as the Admiral looked at her back, bare and marred. Each scar told a story of pain and desperation, a map of battles fought on the fringes of sanity. A whisper rolled through the small crowd, eyes wide with shock. This wasn't just a woman, this was a walking testament to survival, or maybe something far darker. In her eyes, there was a depth that pulled you in, like an abyss ready to swallow whole those who dared to look too closely. What did she endure? As locals gathered under the dying sun, they could feel the weight of her mystery, pulsing through the golden-lit evening. The rumble of distant thunder mirrored the unease thrumming in their hearts. Strange indeed, that the Admiral would shudder, and yet, both fear and fascination drew him closer. The whispers around him were sharp and jagged, full of speculation, as if they were testing the waters of some unspeakable truth. The townsfolk glanced between her and the Admiral, eyes flickering with judgment. How could he bear to look at them, they murmured, horrified and captivated. Doesn't he see what she has become? It felt like the air shifted, holding its breath, waiting for the next moment to unfold. They could sense the history crackling like static, weaving a web between them, binding their fates tightly. Yet, beyond the scars, something deeper lurked. Was her suffering merely a backstory, or was she tied to a secret that could unravel them all? Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the crowd braced itself, the Admiral finally spoke, voice cracking under the enormity of what he had seen. What did they do to you? He asked, the words barely a whisper, yet their weight resonated like thunder in the empty space around them. She turned slowly, her gaze piercing. The chill in the air grew sharper, the shadows around them twisting with anticipation. This was the moment they were all waiting for, a glimpse into a world of chaos hidden behind her scars. What truth lay beneath that hardened exterior? Would it be salvation or damnation? All eyes were on her, waiting, hearts racing, the mystery deepening, pulling them closer to the edge. The moment hung in the air, taut and electric. She turned fully to face him, her expression unreadable. The crowd inhaled collectively, a single breath held like the calm before a storm. Her lips parted, and for a heartbeat, it seemed she would reveal her secrets. But instead, she looked away, scanning the faces of the townsfolk who had gathered, their hopes and fears radiating from them like heat waves. What I endured, she started hesitantly, her voice breaking, then stealing with fierce resolve. Wasn't he just about pain? It was about choices, my choices. A ripple of confusion spread across the crowd. What could she mean? Choices made within a nightmare no one could comprehend. Was she placing blame? Had she entered into a pact with darkness? The Admiral felt a knot form in his stomach. What if her past crimes connected back to him? His memories clawed at him, desperate to emerge. Stand close enough to see the scars, she continued, locking eyes with the Admiral once more, but far enough to remain untouched by the horrors that lay beneath. Her voice dipped lower, 2 shades darker. And be careful what you wish to uncover, Admiral. A low murmur spread among the locals. They shifted uncomfortably as shadows stretched and danced on the ground, bending to her will. They were mesmerized. They were terrified. The Admiral frowned, glancing at the faces glaring at him. Was he the monster in this tale? Or merely a pawn in her twisted game? Then her eyes narrowed, cold and steely. I was not the one who chose this life. They did. The Admiral's blood ran cold. the implication seeped into his veins like poison. Who? He asked, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. Her silence dangled between them, a chasm filled with the weight of unspoken truths. An old memory flickered, the name of a ghost from his past teasing just out of reach, taunting him. They wear masks, she finally replied, her voice steady, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 sighs. But they are everywhere. They watch, they judge, they are the true architects of this hell. A sudden gust of wind swept through, catching her hair and temporarily lifting the veil of torment that hung over them. The townsfolk recoiled, unable to look away as she spun back towards them, anger now igniting in her eyes. Do you think it ends with my scars? She spat, her voice rising above the wind. No. It begins here. Here, in this town. Right now. The Admiral felt his heart race as he tried to process her words. Had the town been complicit in her suffering? Were they part of something more sinister? Pressure mounted around him, an invisible force pulling him to the brink of revelation. I know what you did, she hissed, her eyes boring into his. And it's only a matter of time before they come for you too. Gasps erupted among the townsfolk, harsh and disbelieving. The Admiral struggled to keep his composure, sweat beading on his forehead. What had he done that she knew about? What had she done that would have put her on their radar? Before he could ask, a low growl erupted from the shadows, the forest at their backs stirring ominously. The crowd froze, instincts flaring. They feared the unknown stalking the periphery, but they were too captivated to flee. Remember, she breathed, a chilling promise lacing her words. The past always returns. And when it does, the scars will bleed anew. With that, she turned on her heel, a shadow retreating, leaving behind a web of whispers and terrified hearts. The Admiral's mind raced as he stepped forward, desperate for answers, but already, she was lost to the darkness. What horror awaited them in the depths of the unknown? The horizon cracked with thunder, foreshadowing the storm to come, and the Admiral knew one thing for certain: they were all in it together now, whether they liked it or not. And deep in the bristling shadows, something sinister stirred, waiting, watching, ready to reveal what lay hidden beneath the bones of the past. Would the townsfolk come together, or would they tear apart at the seams? The air thickened with an unshakable tension as the crowd began to murmur in hushed tones. Faces twisted in confusion and fear, the Admiral could sense their collective anxiety, echoing his own. He turned, searching the forest's edge, where the low growl had come from. Darkness coiled like a serpent among the trees, but what lay hidden just beyond the reach of the fading light? What do you mean, they wear masks? Someone from the crowd finally spoke up, their voice quavering. This simple question created a ripple of anxiety that spread like wildfire, each pair of eyes darting nervously, searching for something, anything that could offer clarity. The Admiral felt the weight of their fear heavy on his chest. His own heart raced, her words were daggers, slicing through his thoughts, conjuring images of a past he thought he had escaped. Choices. Choices made long ago, choices that might have sealed his fate alongside hers. Look to the light, she had said. He should have listened then. But instead, he found himself isolated, standing at the dark heart of the gathering. The insults and judgments began to fly, whispers of blame filling the air. They were no longer just shadows anymore, he could see the glimmers of accusation sparking in their eyes. Get out! Shouted a frantic voice from the crowd, a man who had lost a child to the very nightmares they spoke of. You were part of it too. The Admiral's hands clenched into fists at his sides. You don't know what I've done. He roared back, finding some shred of strength amidst the chaos. The air hung thick with accusation, flaring more with every heartbeat. Then, without warning, a loud crack echoed through the air as the trees creaked ominously, branches bending under the pressure of an unseen force. The crowd gasped and staggered away from the shadow's edge, but he stood firm, unwilling to retreat. He was caught between the truth they feared and the monster he never thought he would become. From somewhere deep in the thicket, shapes began to flicker. Dark, twisted forms molded by absence of light. The growling intensified, rising into a chorus as shadows started to spill out, creeping towards them, hungry and relentless. "Stay back!" the Admiral shouted, but the warning fell on deaf ears. The townsfolk were paralyzed by fear, terror locked them in place like deer caught in headlights. His own heart pounded against his ribs, threatening to break free in panic. "Do you see them?" she had said. "They are everywhere." Then suddenly, he realized the truth: the masks, the others she had alluded to. They weren't just figments of his imagination, nor were they the forgotten whispers of a haunted past. They were real, and they had returned to collect what was theirs. With each step they took, the crowd became more desperate, murmurs now rising into panic. They shouted for help, for guidance. Their faces were bloodless, and their breaths came quick and shallow. The Admiral needed them to see the truth, to understand that facing the darkness was a choice they had to make together. Someone must step forward. He commanded, his voice just a fraction steadier than before. "To face what lies hidden. If we don't." But before he could finish, a piercing scream echoed from the trees, sharp and filled with raw terror. It sliced through the crowd, halting all sound. In that moment, a figure emerged, silhouetted against the encroaching darkness. A flash of white hair flickered like a beacon in the night. "We have to go," she exclaimed, her eyes wild with fear. "They're coming." The Admiral could feel their panic rising as they shifted closer together. The shadows loomed like an encroaching tide, threatening to drown them all. But then, as he looked towards the figure, into those frantic eyes, he recognized her. She was a part of his past, a truth he had long buried beneath guilt and regret. This wasn't just about scars anymore, it was about survival. And then the ground shook, the shadows rushed closer, and he understood the fight was about to begin. But first, the Admiral had to know, what had she been hiding all this time? As the darkness closed in, the looming question filled his mind: what had she unleashed from the past, and could they face it together before it was too late? The figure with the white hair darted towards the crowd, her movements frantic yet somehow elegant, a desperate dancer in a theater of terror. The gaze of the Admiral met hers, but all he saw was sheer panic reflected back. "Run!" she shouted again, her voice cracking like lightning. "They won't stop until they have you." The shadows behind her twisted and writhed, emerging from the trees with alarming speed. Dark shapes seemed to elongate, stretching towards the crowd like sinister tendrils. The Admiral felt the ground tremble beneath his feet as the air crackled with an energy he couldn't comprehend. This wasn't just fear, it was an ancient horror clawing its way back into their lives. "Get to the hills!" the Admiral shouted. "We need to get higher ground." But his words barely registered with the townsfolk. They were frozen in place, eyes wide with terror, waiting for an answer that wouldn't come. A child whimpered nearby, and the Admiral's heart sank. Suddenly, the shadows lunged forward, snapping like hungry jaws, and the crowd erupted into chaos. Men and women flailed about, scrambling for a way out. The Admiral felt panic wash over him as he turned back to the white-haired figure. "What do we do?" he demanded, urgency dripping from his voice. Her eyes were wild, darting behind her as if the very darkness had eyes of its own. "There's a sanctuary in the old church. But we need to go now." She grabbed his arm, pulling him into motion. They raced through the crowd, weaving between paralyzed townsfolk, dragging them along. Each step weighed heavy, each heartbeat loud in his ears. Every shadow that flickered felt like a reminder of his past failures, echoing warnings he'd ignored too long. Then, just as they reached the edge of the crowd, a husky growl reverberated from the forest, sending a fresh wave of terror rushing through them. The silhouettes of figures shifted within the trees. Some wore grotesque masks, eyes glowing with a wicked light. "What are they?" someone cried from the group behind them. "They're the ones we thought were gone," the Admiral shouted, feeling a chill slither down his spine. "They're the ghosts of what we've buried." The sound of footsteps behind them surged. The Admiral turned to see a child, lost and alone in the pandemonium. With a sudden surge of desperation, he broke from the group. He couldn't leave the boy. Stay close. He bellowed as he sprinted toward the small figure, who was frozen by fear. As he reached the child, a shadow lunged forward, a figure clad in darkness. The Admiral's instincts kicked in. He pushed the child to the ground just as a massive shape barreled past him. The air hitched with the acrid smell of decay, and that dark laughter echoed, making his blood run cold. With a furious resolve, the Admiral grabbed the child and hoisted him above his shoulder. The boy's whimpers pierced the chaos, urging him onward. Behind them, the white-haired figure was fighting two tossing improvised weapons at the dark figures emerging from the forest. Not here. She yelled, determination igniting in her eyes. We can't let them catch us now. They bolted towards the old church, its silhouette stark against the horror closing in around them. The whispers of the past caught the Admiral's ears, clarity dawning on him like a torrid flame. They had to confront the masks, confront their own past in order to banish this darkness once and for all. They couldn't just run, something had to give. As they reached the church's threshold, the door creaked open, revealing flickering candlelight inside. Yet, a surge of uncertainty pierced through to him. What if this was another trap? What if the darkness was stronger than they had ever imagined? He hesitated. But the voices behind him were already urging him forward. Go! Go! His companions cried. The darkness loomed ever closer, pushing him to decide. With the child clinging to his back and those frantic eyes urging him ahead, he took a step into the dim light of the church. But inside lay something unexpected, something he desperately hoped wasn't too late to confront. What have we walked into? He muttered, a knot of fear tightening in his stomach. As the doors swung shut behind them, the shadows began to gather, pressing tightly against the walls. But with each heartbeat, one thought remained clear: his past was about to collide with his present, and the reckoning was imminent. Was the old church truly a sanctuary, or merely a stage for their final confrontation? Only the darkness would reveal the truth. The door slammed shut with an ominous thud, sealing them inside the old church. Flickering candlelight cast jittery shadows over time-worn pews and cracked stained glass. The air was thick with the smell of incense and lingering dread. What do we do now? The boy whimpered, clutching the Admiral's neck with clammy hands. The white-haired figure, her face illuminated by the dancing flames, looked around the room, her expression a mix of determination and fear. We need to hold them off. If we can get the altar lit, we might have a chance. Lit? The Admiral's heart raced. How? We barely have time. No questions. Just follow my lead. She rushed to the altar at the front of the church, where an ancient candlestick stood, expectant and empty. As she scrambled, the ominous growl from outside morphed into the sound of something slithering against wood. The Admiral turned, pressing the boy against him, shielding him as the shadows pressed up against the stained glass, morphing into grotesque figures, their faces twisted in malice. Let us in, old man. We know your fears. The whispers seeped through the cracks, curling around the Admiral like icy tendrils. He clenched his fists, trying to chase away the doubts clawing at his mind. He had faced enemies before, smart, tactical. But these were something different. A lingering guilt washed over him, memories he couldn't bear to face taking form in the swirling darkness. These are the ghosts, he murmured. My ghosts. The white-haired figure, struggling to light the first candle, shot him a glance. You think too much. Overcome it. We don't have time for regrets. With newfound resolve, he moved to help her, grabbing matches from her pocket. As he struck one against the rough wood of the altar, the flame danced to life and flared out, illuminating the space, a reminder that light could still exist. She hurriedly positioned the candle while he lit another, the glow pushing back the creeping darkness, if only for a moment. Outside, the howls grew loud and frenzied. Dark figures charged at the door like a tide of malice, rattling the old wood. The Admiral felt the adrenaline coursing through him, pushing him forward. We need to get more candles lit. Now. As they lit more candles, flickers of chaotic movement broke through the glass visions of the past, flashes of horrors that had long haunted him. Faces twisted in pain, abandoned cries for help, each one struck at the core of his being. He could almost hear their whispers, begging for salvation. They won't stop. Not until they have you, the boy choked out, his voice trembling. Don't listen to them. The Admiral roared, his own fear catapulting him forward with new determination. We protect each other. That is how we survive. As the altar began to glow with a warm light, the first blow against the door reverberated through the church, the impact like a cannonball, knocking dust from the rafters above. Sweat dripped down his brow, the heat of bravery mingling with the terror that refused to leave. The white-haired figure, joining him at the altar, raised a candle high. Ancestors above, grant us strength. Banish this darkness. The candles flickered violently, responding to the unseen forces in a dance of defiance. But then a sharp crack pierced the air, splintering the door and casting shadows that morphed into shadowy claws reaching for them. They're trying to break in. She shouted, panic lacing her voice. Then we make our stand. The Admiral took a deep breath, gripping the boy tighter. We push back against the tide, together. The darkness surged, clawing at them, threats gnashing and shrieking. A grim realization took hold. The shadows reflected not just their fears, but their past. Each candle lit represented a flicker of hope, but the reckoning loomed closer with every howl. Remember. The white-haired figure yelled, her voice cutting through chaos. What you face outside is nothing compared to what lurks inside. As another blow echoed against the door, the shadows shrank, recoiling as if the dim light threatened their very existence. But just as suddenly, they lunged, forcing the church to shudder. The Admiral felt the urgency of time slipping through his fingers. What if this isn't enough? The boy's voice trembled. We may have to make a choice, the Admiral said, his mind racing. Suddenly, clarity struck him like a bolt of lightning. The fight wasn't just about surviving the night. It was about confronting the darkness within that had plagued them for so long. He turned to the figures at the door, gathering the remnants of his courage. You want us? Then come. Face your judgment. But as he prepared for the confrontation, a chilling realization shuddered through him. What if he wasn't ready for the truth it revealed? As the door shattered wide, revealing the writhing shadows, the Admiral braced himself for the wave crashing down upon them. Was the darkness outside merely a curtain for what awaited them on the other side? Would the past reclaim him, or was there a chance for freedom hidden within the impending storm? The shadows poured into the church like a dark thick fog, swirling and shifting with a malevolent life of their own. The instant the door cracked wide, the screams of the lost souls erupted with an anguished roar, reverberating off the walls like thunder. The candle flames flickered violently, almost extinguishing at the harsh breath of the void that spilled over them. The Admiral was frozen for a fleeting moment, heartsick memories clawing at him, threatening to pull him under. The boy pressed closer, his small body trembling against the weight of terror that hung in the air. What do we do? He squeaked, his wide eyes reflecting the flickering flames. Light the candles. Keep them lit. The white-haired figure shouted, her voice steeled with urgency. We have to hold them back. Instinct kicked in, the Admiral lunged at the nearest candle, breathless, his hands shaking as he struck another match. He could feel the chilling presence, the wails of the desperate souls reaching for him, not yet ready to let go of their pain. He lit the candle, its soft glow barely touching the edges of the room, but it was enough. Outside, the darkness stirred, a wave of anger surging against the remaining door like a furious storm. You dare resist, it hissed through voices that sounded like cracked glass. You cannot escape your memories. Shut up. He shouted back, more to himself than the shadows. Each word felt like a step into a strange oblivion, grappling with everything he had buried deep inside. A howl erupted, and he whipped back to see the white-haired figure placing candles in a circle, her determination shining through the urgency of the moment. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with conviction. "We can cleanse this place," she called out, her voice sharper than the wind howling outside. The boy stepped beside him, eyes bright with the spark of something raw and hopeful. "Together," he squeaked, almost rallying the dwindling courage left in his tiny frame. They moved in synchrony, candle after candle lit, each flame igniting not just wax, but a defense against the encroaching dark. The barrier of light shimmered weakly, pushing back at the storm of shadows, but they were relentless. The church groaned under the weight of the past clawing at their hearts. "Face your past," the white-haired woman yelled, her voice resonating like a battle cry. "It's the only way through this storm." The Admiral's heart thundered in his chest, despair clawed at his throat. In that moment, the darkness outside taunted him, whispering fragments of betrayal, a voice too familiar. "Remember her?" It crackled, cold and cruel. "The one you abandoned?" The memories surged forth, a flood of pain. He could see her face scarred, paint a visage of disappointment and anguish. When he turned away, thinking it would shield him from her cries, he had only given into the abyss. "No." He trembled, shaking his head, eyes wild. "I will not let you claim me again." The shadows howled louder in protest, crashing against the now fractured door, splintering wood and weakening their barrier. But something stirred within him, something fierce. He crouched low, igniting another match, holding it steady as if his life depended on that spark. "Stay with me," he said, directing his voice to the boy. "Whatever happens, don't turn away. We fight for our light." As their circle of illumination grew, the shadows recoiled, their malice momentarily halted. Raw and desperate, the boy raised his candle higher, glancing at the Admiral. "You can still tell her you still have a chance." The Admiral's breath caught as he processed that reality. They stood at a threshold, the point of no return. Hope glimmered in the flickering flames, and something inside him began to unshackle, but just as the shadows seemed to tremor and pull back, thick black vines reached forth, snaking directly toward the candles, as if drawn by a forbidden connection. The white-haired figure yelled, "Protect the light. Don't let them touch it." As the darkness clung to the flickering flames, the very essence of the past began to intertwine with the present. Which would consume whom? The weight of history hung between them, a crushing reminder that choices would be made. The Admiral stood firm, heart caught between what was lost and what could still be salvaged. In that moment of suspended time, the darkness surged again, a vengeful tide threatening to overwhelm everything. Then, rising above it all, an ominous whisper materialized. "What if you cannot let go?" The Admiral clenched his jaw, wrapping his fingers around the small, fragile candle. The moment had arrived. Would he finally confront his demons, or would the wounds of the past continue to dictate his future? Outside, the void howled in anticipation. The shadows closed in. What awaited him on the other side of this reckoning? Would he finally find the courage to face her? The shadows twisted closer, stretching like dark fingers, eager to snuff out the flickering flames. With every heartbeat, dread seeped deeper into the Admiral's bones. "We can't give in," he whispered, rallying his fragmented resolve. He forced his eyes shut for a split second, the flickering candlelight illuminating the haunting image of her, his wife, her back riddled with scars he had never been able to forget, each one a reminder of the hurt he had caused. But he couldn't let the darkness claim those memories. Not now. "Focus!" The white-haired woman screamed, fighting against the encroaching shadows. "Bring your light to the fight." Heart racing, the Admiral opened his eyes. The boy, trembling but resolute, held his candle high, the wax dripped like tears down its side. "We're not scared," he cried out, the innocence of his voice piercing through the chaos. The boy's courage ignited a flicker of warmth in the Admiral's heart. With renewed determination, the Admiral moved to the boy's side. "Together, we'll hold the light," he shouted, feeling a bond forming in their shared fear and hope. He could almost feel her presence in the warmth of the flames, urging him forward, an anchor that pulled him from the depths of despair. The swirling darkness hissed, pushing harder against the sanctuary of their light. Fools! You think you can reclaim what was lost? It was a twisted echo, a cacophony of forgotten voices that stirred in the shadows. The past never dies, then let it die here. The white-haired woman yelled, grabbing the last candle from the altar. With a flicker and spark of resolve, she lit it, placing it in their circle with an invincible spirit. The shadows recoiled momentarily, the room flickering with a brilliant light. It felt like a small victory, but it was not enough. Vines clawed at the air, cold and serpentine. You don't know the price of your defiance. They shouted, weaving around like snakes poised to strike. Without warning, the church's stained glass windows shattered, shards raining to the ground. The boy yelped, eyes wide as chaos engulfed them. They're coming in. Focus on the candles. The Admiral cried, desperation clawing at his throat. Each flame danced defiantly against the storm, a heartbeat in the darkness. But then, from within the rising tide of shadows, a figure emerged. Silhouetted against the curling darkness, she stood there, his wife. Eyes like burning coals pierced through him, a look of sorrow mixed with strength. Why did you leave me? Her voice echoed, raw and quivering. Each word struck him like a physical blow. No. He roared, shaking his head violently. I fought for us. And I can still fight. The boy's candle trembled as it flicked in the chaos. Don't let her take you. He yelled, the weight of innocence making his plea all the more poignant. The shadows around her slithered closer, encircling her. She reached toward him, her hand stretched out like a plea. You could save me if only you released the past. He could see her scars, phantom marks lingering in the shadows. His heart ached, a painful twist. I can't. Pain flickered across his features, each memory a weight dragging him back to despair. With a final surge, the shadows lunged, wrapping thick tendrils around the candles, threatening to snuff out their defiance. Colors faded. The warmth waned. Face your choice. The dark chorus shouted. Which will you claim? The Admiral's pulse thundered in his ears. He crouched lower, burning resolve igniting within him. The flames flickered wildly. I choose the light. He shouted, voice fierce as he pressed forward. No more shadows. No more hiding. As he pushed the candles forward, the barrier of flames surged, expelling the darkness momentarily. Yet, as it receded, the shadowy figure of his wife remained, waiting. Will you fight for me? She called, voice echoing with desperation, his breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just a trial of light, it was a reckoning of his heart. Could he confront the truths he had buried? The darkness surged again, and the church walls creaked. Would his choice shatter everything he knew? The shadows closed in once more, their whispers rising like a tide. Will you sacrifice your heart to free mine? With the walls closing in, the moment pressed, breathless and electric. What awaited him in the heart of this turmoil? Would he have the strength to sever the ties that bonded him to pain, or would the shadows claim his soul once more? The darkness surged forward, a wave of despair threatening to obliterate everything the Admiral had fought for. His heart raced, each thud echoing the urgency of the moment. No more regrets. He yelled, channeling every scrap of his will into that single declaration. The candles flickered vigorously, repelling the shadows for the briefest moment, but the dark tendrils didn't relent. They pulsed and wriggled, seeking entry, pressing against his mind, teasing out the secrets he had so long buried. He could feel them wrapping around his thoughts, trying to drag him down into his own guilt and torment. You can't win. The shadows hissed, their whispers cold against his skin. Your past will always return. Shut up. He choked out, gritting his teeth. The boy beside him, wide-eyed and trembling, couldn't hide his terror. The Admiral glanced down, seeking to shield the boy from the encroaching darkness, while the white-haired woman stood resolute, her expression a steely combination of fear and determination. Together, they formed a flickering chain of light against the rising tide, yet the shadows weren't just physical anymore. They had become echoes of his own mind, a reflection of everything he'd done wrong. "Let her go," the Admiral implored, his voice trembling. "I want to choose the darkness. I want to lose her again." The figure of his wife twisted, the shadows around her forming a grotesque visage, highlighting the scars that lined her back. "You didn't lose me," she rasped, her voice wrapped in anguish, "you let me go." Each word felt like a dagger. He remembered the decisions he had made, the missions he had undertaken, all in the name of honor and duty. But now, standing against the palpable grief emanating from her, he knew those choices had come at too high a cost. "Don't!" the boy cried out, panic rising in his voice. "Please don't listen. It's a trick, it's all a trick." The boy gripped his candle tighter, a tremor running through his small frame. The Admiral looked at him, seeing a reflection of his own struggles, the choice between the past and the bond of light they shared. "No." The Admiral shook his head, casting his gaze back to the shadows. "This isn't who we are." He thrust his candle forward, an act of defiance that lit the air with a sudden brilliance. The shadows wavered, recoiling as if burned by the strength of his conviction. "Face your demons." The white-haired woman shouted, voice rising above the cacophony. "Face your truth. Only then can you save her." The room trembled, the arguments of light against darkness meeting with ferocious intensity. He struggled with rising fury, the angry shapes of shadows swirling like an impending storm. "No more hiding!" he roared, directing his fury at the figure of his wife, now almost unrecognizable in the shadows. "I refuse to let you haunt me." She gasped, hands faltering as her claws of darkness loosened. For the briefest moment, admiration flickered in her eyes. "Then choose, my love. Choose the light." Every muscle in his body screamed for him to run, to surrender to the simplicity of pain. But in that heartbeat, something else surged within him, a swell of deeper emotion, one that could shatter those confines. He took a gasping breath, summoning every last ounce of courage. "I choose to remember," he thundered, daring the shadows to expose their true nature. "I choose to confront you. I choose hope." As those words rang out, the shadows froze, caught off guard by his unexpected strength. Then, with a deafening roar, they lunged, a surging tide desperately hungry to consume him whole. "Stay with me," he cried, gripping the boy's candle. "Hold on tight together." But just as the darkness loomed, there came an earth-shattering shift. The air crackled, a blinding light bursting forth from the candles, igniting everything in its wake. Suddenly, the shadows gasped, beginning to pull back as if recoiling from fire. In this moment of intensity, would the light triumph, or had the Admiral just awakened a force he couldn't control? Amid the chaos, he locked eyes with the shadowy figure of his wife, their connection stretching thin yet electric. "What if freeing you brings doom?" he shouted, voice strained but resolute. Caught in the throes of fate, they teetered on the edge. Would light truly rise from the ashes of their past, or would the shadows drag them down into eternal despair? The light exploded outward, washing over the room in waves of golden brilliance, tearing apart the darkness that pressed in around them. The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of tormented voices rising like a storm, and he felt the boy's small hand shake against his. The white-haired woman had her jaw set, determination etched in every line of her face. "Now, don't let it go," she shouted, but the Admiral wasn't ready to face the truth just yet. Images of his wife's anguished form danced in the light, flickering like a film torn between two worlds, one of unspeakable joy and the other, shadowed by regret. Each blast of light revealed more of the gruesome figure she had become, and his heart twisted. He took a step forward, and the shadows recoiled as if scorched. "No matter what happens," he murmured to the boy, "we must hold on." In an instant, his world flipped. The weight of guilt, long held and fermenting in the shadows of his mind, surged forth like an unleashed tide. "You think you're free of your sins? The shadows snarled, their voices layered and sinister. They're a part of you. Always will be. Shut up. The Admiral roared, his voice echoing against the walls. He could feel his heart thudding fiercely in his chest, pumping adrenaline through his veins. He would not succumb. I am more than my mistakes. As he held the boy tighter, he felt the boy's pulse quicken. The sheer terror of what they faced became almost tangible, an oppressive weight. The shadows writhed around them, searching for any weakness, any flicker of doubt. You can't hide from the truth. A life built on bloodshed will only lead to more blood. They shrieked at in that moment. He caught a glimpse of memories he'd buried deep, the orders he had given, the missions that took lives, the nights spent in a drunken stupor regretting every action. The night he had let her go, refusing to risk the mission for a moment of tenderness. Suddenly, amidst the chaos, a new sound emerged, a soft, haunting melody that pulsed through the air. His breath caught in his throat as the shadows fell silent. It was his wife's voice, clear and ethereal, rising above the din of darkness. You don't have to bear the burden alone, she sang, the painful notes cutting through the fear. You can still find redemption. He felt his heart ache, a fierce pang of longing that twisted painfully within him. Here she was, a sliver of hope wrapped in despair, reminding him that forgiveness was still a choice. I loved you then, and I love you still, he shouted back, steeling his resolve. I will not allow the past to destroy our present. The shadows surged again, this time as if stung by his words. They tore at him, pulling him backward into their cold embrace. He dug his feet into the ground, resolute. Light erupted from his candle, merging with the boy's, forming a barrier against the creeping darkness. The white-haired woman stepped closer, her voice steady, slicing through the chaos. We must unite our light. Only by facing the truth together can we defeat what haunts him. He turned to her, eyes wide. Could it really be that simple? His past, the weight of anguish and regret, felt insurmountable. Yet, if they combined their strength, could they cast it out forever? For a fleeting moment, he believed. He reached out, clasping the small hands of the boy and the woman, their fingers intertwining around their flickering candles. Together, we are stronger than our past. He declared, but as they formed their link, the shadows screamed once more, churning violently as if preparing for a final assault. The shadows were relentless. They surged forward, now more monstrous than ever, determined to snatch away their moment of unity. What if this is the end? The boy whispered, voice trembling. Then let we fight. The Admiral shouted. A blend of hope and desperation filled the air, but would their light extinguish the dark, or would it consume them all? As the final wave of shadows crashed down upon them, he felt the world begin to tilt. The ground shook beneath their feet. Would they stand firm in this torrent, or would they be swept away into the abyss? The answer teetered on the edge, a breath away from being decided. The raging storm of shadows swelled around them, threatening to envelope everything they had fought for. The chilling darkness roared, a cacophony of lost voices desperate for recognition. Yet, in that tumultuous moment, an ember of hope sparked inside the Admiral's heart. He felt it in the grip of the boy's small hands, the strength of the white-haired figure beside him, and the flickering candles raised high like beacons against the night. They were the essence of defiance, the last bastions of light that could either penetrate the depths of despair or be snuffed out by the very shadows they faced. Together. The Admiral shouted, his voice rising above the howling chaos. We will not let the past control us. As they executed their plan, the moment froze, a piercing clarity illuminated the solemn burden he had carried for so long. He could feel the power of their unity brewing like a storm of its own. The shadows slithered, desperate to reclaim what they had once held, but he realized now they were no longer alone in this fight. They were entwined in a shared purpose to confront that treachery head-on. Breathe. The white-haired woman called, guiding them with an unwavering voice. Unite your light and release your fear. The candles blazed brighter at their command, forming a radiant circle against the insatiable darkness. With each flicker, memories flooded his mind, not just guilt and sorrow, but love and forgiveness entwined with the faces of those he lost. His wife, standing amidst the swirling shadows, began to tremble, her form shifting between past and present. "Can you see me?" she pleaded, vulnerability cracking through her fierce exterior. "Will you dare to recognize the truth?" He could hear the weight in her words, a longing mixed with pain. Would she be a fond memory or the nightmare of regrets? "I see you," he cried out, raw emotion spilling from his heart. "And I remember the light you brought into my life. I welcome it back." The shadows wavered, their hold faltering as if drawn by his words. A momentary rift opened, illuminating the church with a golden hue, pushing the darkness back. The boy's candle flared with newfound vigor as hope surged through him, igniting both their hearts. "Stay steady," the white-haired woman urged, and they stood taller, hands uniting around their flickering defenses. Each breath surged with renewed energy, pushing against the restless evaporating darkness. "Now let your light guide you." The Admiral surged forward, chanting a mantra that echoed through the hall. "I choose the light. I stand against you." With each declaration, the shadows hissed, recoiling as if struck by each wave of radiant power resonating among them. His wife's silhouette flickered, an unresolved spirit seeking closure. "Face your choices," she whispered, the words cutting through the tumult like a lifeline. "Can you forgive yourself?" "Yes," he bellowed, voice full of conviction. "I accept my past, my choices, my failures. I let you go that night to protect you, and I will never run from it again." The contrast of darkness and light drew taut, the shadows shrieked in retaliation. But with every word spoken, the connection to his wife glimmered with tenderness, like a sun breaking through the storm clouds. "Feel it," he shouted, igniting their shared resolve. "This pain, this regret. Hold it with me." The boy, clinging tightly to his neck, mirrored the determination etched on the Admiral's face, bravery mixing seamlessly with innocence, believing in the strength of light over dark. "We won't lose you," he cried, trusting his words to etch themselves upon the fabric of reality. Then, with a united chant, they lifted their candles high. The searing light erupted in resistance. Each candle's flame intertwined to form a brilliant blaze, consuming the shadows, pushing them back further until the walls of darkness trembled under the joint force of their will. "I love you," the Admiral called to his wife, and with that acknowledgement, tears streaked down his cheeks. "I'm here." She leaped through the shroud of shadows, breaking free as the dark phantoms dissipated. Then with one last push, the light surged forth, reclaiming the sanctuary, filling every crevice with warmth and dignity. As the darkness retreated, the church was bathed in shimmering gold. The shadows turned to smoke, dissipating into nothingness, lost to the past from whence they came. With a loud shattering roar, the old wood of the door finally cracked open, revealing the dawn's light spilling in from the horizon, bathing them in the promise of new beginnings. The Admiral fell to his knees, exhausted but victorious. The white-haired woman joined him, and the boy hugged them both tightly. The air was clearer, a sweet reminder of a fight won, a burden shared. In that moment, time stretched, and healing possibilities unfurled like a blossom following the storm. "Together, we persevere," the white-haired woman murmured, looking each of them in the eye. "To new horizons," the Admiral added, grateful for every scar and lesson learned. As they stood there, unbroken by the darkness, a wave of relief washed over them. Each soul present had transformed, intertwined by the mutual promise to confront any shadow lurking just out of sight, knowing that together, the light would always remain, and with that, a sense of peace fell upon the old church, clarity booked in their hearts. But before their nostalgia could engulf them, the Admiral felt an urgency surge within him, the need to take this revelation further, to ensure that others would find their paths to freedom from the looming darkness. "Join me," he exclaimed, rising to his feet with fervor. "Let us share our story and protect our town. The past holds lessons. We must ensure it never rises again." Determined, he looked at the townsfolk filtering in, drawn by the commotion. They gathered, expectant behind weathered faces, ready to listen, to learn. And in that moment, a new chapter began, where pain did not dictate their futures, nor define their choices. As sunlight poured through the cracks of the stained glass, he smiled, knowing that together, they had fought not just for their lives but for an enduring legacy. Now was the moment to rise, and he extended his hand toward the dawn, inviting them all into the brilliance of tomorrow, where the scars of the past only serve to light their way. Don't miss the next incredible journey. You need to subscribe now to not miss a second of the exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help the community grow. Flood the comments below with your thoughts and theories about this gripping conclusion. And for the love of all things thrilling, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.